affordable housing. And I want to welcome the folks on Zoom and the folks that we have here in person. We've got some wonderful staff from DOB in the house. We've got some awesome residents, both online and in person. We've got some Empower DC staff. We got a whole crowd of people today, so that's wonderful. And thank you all for being here. Before we get into inspections and enforcement and breaking down that process and tenant feedback, we want to start off with just knowing who's in the room with us. So if folks in Zoom could share in the chat your name, ward, or neighborhood that you're living in, and one concern that you have around housing conditions or the inspections and enforcement process with DOB. And while we're doing that in the chat, we'll definitely look through and monitor that. And we're also going to start going around and maybe sharing in person. A couple folks in person want to share, your name, where you're joining us, can't talk today, what wards you live in, and one concern that you have. Does that sound good? Okay, so Jan, can we start with you?
Hi, I'm Jan Baker. I'm the president of 2 Evans Street Apartments Tenants Association in Ward 6. My concern are, inspections, how they're being carried out, building-wide inspections. When we can have those done, and we've tried to schedule some building-wide inspections, and that hasn't happened. So just the overall customer service with the Department of Buildings.
Thank you, Jan. And I want to welcome Ms. Funke, who's in the chat from Ward 3, and also Gabe is in the house from Ward 5. Thank you for joining.
And I will say, I don't think we'll have time to hear like in depth from everybody during intros, but definitely want to hear like name, ward, if there's like one thing you want to highlight.
Yes, we'll have plenty of time to get into the
time to get
process
into it.
later, yeah.
I'm Nathan from Ward 5, and my main concern is handicap assessment for my building.
My name is Denise. My concern is more likely making sure that the buildings are safe from people that's coming from outside, trashing up the buildings.
I'm Tara. I'm a law student. I actually live in Virginia, but used to live in DC and Nova.
I'm Weston. You're
Hi, I'm Jill. I live in Ward 5, and my main concern is actually personal at this point, but with landlord violations that I have so many, but every time I go to one, I have to go back and start all over again for the other one because it's a different department. But if the house catches on fire, the whole house is going down. So it's taking forever, and I need help, but I don't know where to go.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was too much. I love it.
No, I think that reflects a lot of folks' thoughts.
My name is Boyd Smith. I live in Ward
6, and my concern is seniors that don't have grandmas in their apartment, or whatever.
Ronald Smith, Ward 6. Piggybacking on what my wife said, we moved from public housing into what we thought, private apartment. When we got the apartment, we took the reasonable accommodation letter to them, the need for grab bars and whatever. My wife's medical condition as well as my own require that. But we've been told that they don't supply grab bars unless you pay for them, right? Okay, at the time, what kind of place? Save It Home. They was willing to install these grab bars but they've turned them down because they weren't vetted. So, I mean, I've been going through that from during my stay there, as well as leaks in the building and roaches everywhere. So really, I feel that I jumped out of the skillet into the fight.
Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Charles Ross. I am a resident of Ward 8, right down the street in Congress Heights. I am a law professor at American University, a director of law clinic, as well as I am a housing attorney here in DC. And I am here on behalf of my clients who repeatedly, call for Department of Building inspections. And sometimes there's a minor fix, sometimes not, but it's the same repeat offenders. So I'm here mostly to see what we can do to address some of those concerns.
Yeah, thank you.
Go back to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Mia. I'm a legal lawyer here at Bread, working in our housing practice as well. And like what's been voiced here, like almost all of my clients have issues with housing conditions. Many of them interact with DOB and just are thankful for things that are useful, like the reports and stuff. But want more understanding what the citations to turn into actual change for their building, for their.
I'm an attorney at the Children's Law Center. And like some of the other attorneys have mentioned, I'm here to hear how DOB can meet the needs of our clients and hear what the plan might be and try and find out where we can form some advocacy to implement the concerns, solutions to concerns you want face.
My name is Jason Williamson. I'm from the Department of Buildings. I'm a liaison in the director's office, and I guess my primary concern is being here to record all of you guys' concerns and try to take those back to the agency so that we can make improvements where we can. And also accompany key parts here, so code enforcement administrator.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Paul Clark. I organize what's called about slumlords. I'm at Channel Square in Ward 2. And in the past few months, we racked up about 200 DOB violations. And so I'm here for that.
All right, I am Keith Parsons. I am the Strategic Enforcement Administrator at Department of Building. My division includes both the housing code inspectors and the vacant building inspectors and the people that issue all of the civil fines. So I presume I can answer some of your questions. I'm looking forward to talking about your concerns and educating you on some DOB issues.
Oh, thank you. My name is Farah. I'm from Empower DC. And I'll just say we've got folks in the chat from Ward 3, Kunke says enforcement after inspections. Dave from Ward 5, ability of tenants to access good quality housing conditions. Laura from the Onyx on First Tenant Association in Navy Yard, Ward 6. Christian with Latino Economic Development Center and the president of 741 Longfellow Street Tenant Association in Ward 4. Kathleen from Ward 6 from 2M Tenant Association. And I saw we have a few people from 2M who said better enforcement for ensuring that landlords, the issues that are identified in inspections and landlords with a pattern of problems. Oh, I see that those are fixed. A couple other people from 2M. Nicole from Ward 8. How to get inspections and hold the landlord accountable for repairs, president of Skyland Tenant Association. Keisha, Ward 8. I have an all-around slumlord. Yeah, and I'm really excited that we have a bunch of tenant association presidents and board members in the room, because I know that's a really great way to get this information back to the community. So that's exciting. Okay, I'll go to.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for introducing yourselves and for sharing all those concerns, because those are definitely things that we're going to be touching on when we get into the enforcement process. I'm just gonna be super brief and talk about Empower DC. I think we want to get into the actual meat and potatoes of today's meeting. So I'll just briefly share that, you know, we're a grassroots organization. We're committed to community organizing and building the power of DC residents through resident-led community organizing to advance racial, economic, and environmental justice, as well as housing justice. So that's why it's really important for us to be collaborating with residents, especially with this process, because we hear so much about bad housing conditions as a key driver of displacement. And we've witnessed it. So we definitely want to see how we can work together to improve that process.
I think I'm gonna put on
Yep.
DOB.
That's what I was going
Are
to
you seeing this on your screen?
I am not.
Okay, I gotta restart the share then.
Yes.
Okay, so we are actually gonna turn it over to Keith to give us do some level setting about Department of Buildings and strategic enforcement, and then I think we'll get into more of a discussion. So I'll go ahead and put on your slides.
Right. And I can just let you know
Yeah, or,
when to go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, like I said, I am the Strategic Enforcement Administrator at the Department of Buildings. We're gonna go through a set of slides that will let me get out a bunch of sort of basic stuff. A lot of you probably already know some of this, but in case any of you don't, I will go through this. And I'll try to go through it pretty quick. If you can hold questions, then we can have a big question section at the end. So if you go next. All right, so this is the agenda. Like I said, it's gonna go from very general through actually quite specific on the things that you guys are interested in. Next. So yes, the Department of Buildings is led by Director Brian Hanlon, and the mission is to protect the built environment, protect the safety of the people who are using it, including tenants and guests and people walking by on the street. Director Hanlon is also very concerned about greening the city and making sure that we are a catalyst for development that keeps our city vibrant. All right, so this is what you guys are most concerned about tonight. Department of Buildings does enforce the housing and property maintenance codes across both occupied and unoccupied properties. We handle these relatively similarly, and in the future, we will handle them even more similarly. One of the things I'm working on in the next few years is trying to bring these processes closer together. Generally, these are complaint-based inspections. Someone reaches out to us, they say, we have an issue, please come out and look at a property that has an issue. And then we will go out, we will determine if there are any violations. And if there's a violation, what's called a notice of infraction will issue. That will have the violations, that will have the abatement periods, that will have the fines. And notably, a common question we get is for reports. The notice of infraction is the report. There is not a separate, there's no separate record other than a bunch of data in our system. So if there's a violation, a report will issue. Generally speaking, if anything in your property isn't working and the landlord hasn't fixed it, you can call us. If it's broken, it is potentially a violation, and we will come out and look at it. So the first step is always to tell the landlord about the violation. And if you already told them 10 times, tell them the 11th time, because most of the abatement that actually occurs is by the landlord fixing the problem. There are some other ways that things get fixed, but the entire process is designed to get the landlord to do their job. Our job is to get them to do their job, and your job is also to help us get them to do their job. So they need to know, always double, triple, quadruple check. If they're not doing anything, then you file a complaint with us. Our best method that we always recommend is going to dob.dc.gov and using the big 1, 2, 3 menu in the middle of our page right there. And if you're a tenant, you're going to want to request a housing and property maintenance inspection will be what you would select, although it has a whole bunch of different things that you can request there: illegal construction, vacant building, all of that can be requested through that one form. And the reason we prefer that, although you are welcome to reach out to us through 311, you're welcome to reach out by phone. We prefer the form because it really allows us to get the information that helps us be more effective in doing the inspection. You're going to be typing in your email and your phone number, so you can be sure that there's not like a transcription error if we're talking on the phone. 311 is not as powerful as our form, so if you go through 311, we'll get some of the same information, but not all of the same information. But in any event, if you request it through any of these processes, we will schedule a housing and property maintenance inspection within 15 business days or less. To make sure that the landlord knows that there's something broken they need to fix, we will tell the landlord that there's an inspection coming. And we do get a lot of people who are concerned about things like trying to be anonymous or concerned about retaliation. The landlord is going to have to know about the violations, and the landlord is going to have to know where they are. These are legal requirements and they're practical requirements because they can't fix it if they don't know what's broken, where it is. So we will definitely tell the landlord that we're coming. When we find things broken, we are going to tell them what is broken. So that's the next step. If we find any violations, we will issue one or more notices of infraction. And we separate them out into the types of violations because different types of violations receive different priority. The NOIE is for emergency violations. They require abatement within 24 hours. If the landlord cannot prove they abated it within 24 hours, they don't qualify for the program that we refer to as deferred enforcement, which allows landlords under limited circumstances not to face fines. So 24 hours for NOIE. The rest of the violations generally are what's called an NOIR, NOI regular or routine. Those ones, the landlord gets 60 days to abate and still qualify for deferred enforcement. There's a third category that I guess postdates this deck called NOIS, and that is the lowest priority set of violations. This is trash and high grass and weeds on the outside. Those are basically the only two things that get the NOIS treatment. So for each of these, though, DOB will come back and reinspect. And how fast and how many times depends on the priority, but we will, every time we find one of these sets of violations, we will come back and reinspect to see if they're fixed. If they are not fixed, then the NOI is going to be generated and we are going to pursue the rest of the enforcement process. So when landlords don't fix it, if they do, like I said, they can call us up, they can submit through our abatement portal, show us that they fixed it. If they convince us, we may qualify them for deferred enforcement and dismiss the case without fines. But if they don't, then it gets filed at OAH. And everything except for the NOIS gets filed at OAH if it's not abated. And everything that's at OAH, if it's not abated, our team and our attorneys will go to OAH and will attempt to secure the fines. As we'll get into, or as some of your questions may raise, that process takes a long time, but by and large, if it's not fixed, we are trying to get the fines. All right, so I've said it twice, I'll say it again. Most important thing a tenant can do is tell the landlord that something is broken, tell the management company, tell them again, tell them in writing. you know, do provide us contact information for them if you have it, because we also want to tell them, right? Nothing gets fixed if the landlord doesn't fix it. And we don't have any special way to know if like a management company has flipped over or if there's a new super and he's got like a new phone or something. So you might have better information than us on the landlord or property management. Do let the landlord in to fix. And, you know, I hear a lot from landlords who say, I can't get in to fix. And as we'll go over, it's hard for our team and my inspectors, of course. I do not put this burden on to decide who is sort of telling the truth on these sort of convenience issues and coordination issues. So that puts us in a difficult spot. But if the landlord's gonna fix, they're gonna need to have access to the unit. Allow us in the unit, right? Again, this seems kind of basic, but there are requested inspections that end in no access all the time. We need your help to get into the unit. We don't have a magical way to get in. I think of these, you know, there are two types of inspections. There are some like for vacant building or the exterior where this doesn't matter, right? We'll go out, we'll look at the outside of a building. That'll be fine. But most of these interior inspections are what I like to call meet me inspections. You need to meet me out there. You need to let us in. And if we don't get in, for most inspection types, we'll try a couple more times, but eventually, if we can't get in, it's not gonna move forward. And do reach out to us for updates. We have, if you use the form, you will get some automated updates. You should get the NOI after it issues, if you provided us contact information that allows us to do that. But you know, if there's any point where you need more information, please reach out to us. We're there to answer questions. And, you know, while we always welcome feedback on whether we can send more information or more notifications, there's only so many of those we can program at one time. So if your question is urgent, give us a call. We are happy to help. I will go over this super fast. You can also call us for illegal construction. It can happen in your building if you hear hammers and you don't see permits posted. There's supposed to be permits posted if work's being done. You can also look it up online on Scout, or you can know that it's illegal if it's at the wrong time of the day or night. You can call us again, use that 123 menu. And we will be happy to come out and check. And similarly, if you're concerned that a property is vacant, you can request it in the same way. This is not as complicated inspection. Like I said, we go out, we look at whatever property it is, we determine whether we think it's vacant or not, and there is a process where we reach out to the owner to try to determine whether that's accurate or not. So this is my favorite part of the presentation because I love our public dashboards, and I know that they are imperfect, but there is a lot of information that you can get without even calling us up. And even better, you can look at the information, you can understand what's out there, and then you can call us up with like harder questions that aren't basic questions like what happened. The one that we are showing here is called the Landlord Violations Tool. If you go to dob.dc.gov, below the picture of the director, there's a little video of the director. To the left, there'll be a button that says Public Dashboard. It'll take you to a page with 6 choices. One of them says Violations and Abatement. When you click on that, you'll see this. And if you click on this Landlord Violations Tool, be sure to select all fiscal years. You can look up by address or by owner, and you can see everything that we think is broken at the address. This is gonna show you every unabated violation in our database. There's, I don't know what the current total is, maybe like 50,000 unabated violations ever. It doesn't go away unless it is abated or dismissed, or there's a couple other things that make it no longer live. But by and large, this is everything that we believe is broken.
Abated means fixed.
Yes, yes, abated means fixed. And this gives you the basic information, right? When did it happen? Where was it? What is the basics of the violation? What was the fine amount? And if an inspection happens and for some reason you didn't get a report, and you know your landlord got a report, you could go up here and you could see the details of it. Or if the landlord says, maybe you got the report and the landlord's like, oh, I didn't get the report, because they say that all the time. Tell them, go to the dashboard and look at the details. Because all of it is up here. There's another one that's not in the slide deck. Although if anyone wants, I suppose we can always pull them up live. There's one that shows a lot of the details of the prosecution of the NOI. You will be able to look up that thing that says cap ID is gonna be the number for the NOI, 24 NOIR or 24 NOIE. And so here you see violation by violation. If you go to the enforcement dashboard, you'll see NOI by NOI, and there's 3 buckets. There's either pending balance, not yet filed at OAH, pending balance with a judgment from OAH, and then there's sent to the central collections unit. And the reason those are significant is before we get the final judgment, those are all the ones we're working on, the first bucket. Everything that's either before OAH or has been filed there is being prosecuted there. Once we get the judgment, then we are entitled to the money, and there's a period of time where the landlord can pay us. Those ones show up there. If they don't pay us for a few months, it goes to the central collections unit, and then it's out of DOB's hands, the central collections unit. It operates like a collection agency for the whole district, and they call people up, they, try to shake them down for the money, etc. But you can see all of that on the dashboard. Well, yes, go ahead.
Dashboard is for landlords and residents, the dashboard.
Anybody can use it.
Anybody?
It's public,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, and we can send that out to folks too,
The reason we called it the landlord violations tool was because when we initially built it, the primary goal was for landlords who wanted to come back into compliance. They do always say like, I didn't get the NOI, I don't know what's going on. We were like, we made this dashboard so you can know what's going on. You can go put your name in there, you can put your property in there, and you can just, the little arrow at the bottom, you can dump this out into a spreadsheet. You will have a big old to-do list of all the things the Department of Buildings thinks you need to go fix. So, but anyone can use it, and I encourage all of y'all to avail yourselves of it. That's my last substantive slide. Obviously, here's a bunch of links and contacts. And so at this point, I guess I will hand it back or open up the questions, whichever way you want to go.
Were there any follow-up questions?
There was one question in the chat, but I think you kind of answered it. It was just about what happens if landlords decide to eat the fines without fixing it. I know you described the Office of Administrative Hearings process, which is pretty lengthy, which I think we'll talk a little bit more about in enforcement. But I don't know, is there anything else you want to add?
So the eating the fines, if eat the fines means pay the face value, the full face value of the NOI, then that ends the prosecution of that NOI. So an NOI is basically a tool that says landlord fix this or pay this money. And so if they pay the money, they've technically taken one of the 3 choices that's available to them. They're allowed to admit and pay, admit with explanation and try to get the court to give a lesser amount of money to pay, or they can deny and they can fight about it. If that happens, then you can always just request another inspection. We will come back out. If the thing is still broken, we will issue another NOI and the landlord will be back where they were before they paid the fine, except they will pay the fine, and if they want to pay it again, then we can do it again. So hopefully that's helpful. Yes.
What if you have a problem in your building, in your apartment, and you report it? And then all of a sudden you start getting these notes on your door about, what they're gonna do to you. Like, okay, we complained about something, right? We got 5 notices on our door, one was in reference to being evicted. But the rent was paid. And then after that, we've been getting notice every time we turn around, we get notice on our doors about certain things. When we complain about certain things that's not being done.
So retaliation is illegal, and, you know, generally I'd say, don't stop saying fix things, don't stop calling DOB if they don't fix things, reach out to the office of the tenant advocate and explain what's going on to them, and they may be able to point you in the direction of some additional help. But I would encourage everybody, you know, this is a concern people voice all the time, and the law is on your side. I would say blow through it, you know, be like, make my day, fix, or just fix whatever it is, right? Make my day or fix my refrigerator and we can get on.
But in our building, every time you turn around, there's a new person that's in the office that's not giving you what you need. So how do you go from there?
Well, I mean, keep telling the new person, right? Like this is real things that happen, real problems that happen. And the nice thing about having these dashboards and stuff is the new person can look at the dashboard and they can catch themselves right up to all of the open stuff.
Okay.
If they're in good faith, if they're not someone who's threatening or whatnot, they just don't know.
Okay.
I want to ask an unrelated question. I came across a notice, it wasn't visible, you know, it wasn't where anybody and everybody could see it. That in the building that we live in, they are doing some work concerning what's that? Asbestos. I mean, is that a concern?
I mean, asbestos is a concern, but the good news is if they are doing work on it, then they're trying to remediate it. And if they're giving you the notice, then they understand what they're working on and they understand their obligations.
So I don't think anyone has received a notice. I came upon the thing by happenstance. You know, just posted on the side of a petition. You know, where normally if you coming and going, you wouldn't see it, right? So, I mean, it raised my concern because I have COPD. And, you know, I just would like to ask, what if anything could be, when the inspection is done, can they look at that, address that?
I mean, if it's a housing and property maintenance inspection, just the fact that they are working on remediating some asbestos is not going to be a violation. And well, because we want them to remediate asbestos, right? Like I definitely get how you are concerned, especially with COPD, but this is something we want to happen, right? The asbestos is dangerous. That's why it's required to be removed when certain types of changes are made. So, you know, but if you think there is asbestos and say illegal construction is going on or construction that you worry about, you think is disturbing asbestos, you don't think it's being done in the right way, you could ask us for an illegal construction inspection. That would be more on point for that need.
Just to add to what Peter's saying, if they're doing some type of construction that is remediating the asbestos, and we do an illegal construction inspection and we see that they have a lawful permit, then it's likely that they're taking all of the precautions and doing all of the things to make sure that the asbestos is not, in air and whatnot. So I would say, like, if as Keith said, if you even suspect that they're doing anything wrong, then just to err on the side of caution and put in a request for an illegal construction inspection, so that our guys can just come and take a look at it and make sure that they're doing everything, the way it needs to be done.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but, I mean, what about how can you address something if it hasn't been brought to your attention? I'm saying, the only way I was able to see this notice, period, is because I happen to be in a specific area. But I'm saying, you got 10 floors in this building, man. I'm sure that, they haven't notified anybody in that building that they are undertaking, remediation, or that they're trying to address the problem, or even let them know that there's something related to asbestos going on in the building.
Absolutely. And that's, to be quite honest, I think that's one of the issues. I mean, we're all here trying to address some issues. We're, as Keith said before, we're all of those inspections and services that he described, we're all complaint based, right? So, contrary to, what people may think, we don't have, inspectors, driving around the city and looking for violations. We rely on the public, we rely on you guys to say, hey, I think something is going wrong. I think that these people are doing something, wrong, and we want you to come and take a look at it. So unfortunately, like, that's not something that we can proactively address, but, that's certainly an issue with, landlords or property owners who aren't, informing tenants about work that's going on. But I would say that when you do spot something that you think is out of whack or that's not, correct, that you reach out to it. And I'll say this last one, it's similar to, you talk to MPD and they say, if you see something, call 911. And sometimes we think, oh, well, that's just a little thing, I shouldn't call 911 for that. But what they've explained, to me and to residents is, if you call, then as Keith said, they have a record. And so if we keep likewise for DOB, if we keep seeing the same violations or different types of violations at a particular address, then that says to him and to, and to our chief residential inspector, hey, this is something that we need to put more eyes on, more focus on, maybe escalated enforcement action.
Wonderful. I want to thank you both. I'm sorry, you were going to say something. Oh, I was just going to say that's a good segue though into what we're going to be talking about. So we just talked a lot about, you see some, make sure that you let Department of Buildings know. So I just want to talk a little bit about requesting inspections. And I know there's a couple folks that have said things in the chat about, the process not moving. So I do just want to shout out everyone who helped us all the residents who helped us to come up with these concerns, and we can definitely add to them. That's why we left, some space at the bottom. But these, we want to take apart the process from requesting inspections all the way through enforcement. So we're going to start with requesting inspections. And these are the top concerns that folks have, that we co-created together at our last tenant power meeting. So again, thank y'all. And I definitely would love for folks to come off mute, or even, the folks here in the room, if you have some lived experience, or if you were the person that definitely you were like, yes, this is me. Please definitely share your experience and, share more detail about this concern. And then maybe afterwards, after we talk for a few minutes, we can add some things and we would love to also get some feedback from Department of Buildings about these recommendations. So, and I guess, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we probably won't talk about every
Yeah.
single one because there are a lot. And we do want to spend a little more time on enforcement,
Mhm.
right? So we're gonna maybe move a little quicker through like requesting and inspections, because we know that most folks' concerns is actually, well, getting the repairs, right, is the concern. So how do we get to getting the repairs? So we want to spend a little more the time on that.
Yes. So I'm just gonna highlight a couple key themes that came out in requesting an inspection. Language access was huge. And just also, I know we appreciate that a lot of the requesting inspection stuff on the online portal is very user friendly, but it would be nice to have them translated into other languages and to also have that access when people want to request an inspection over the phone. It would also be helpful to have, I know that there's a lot of, you can call DOB and you can ask the questions and you can get the information, but it would be cool to have that proactive, like, here is a info sheet with all of the common housing code violations that you might run across. What can you expect from the inspection? How you prepare for it? All in one place so that folks can easily access it. And then another key theme that came up was mold inspections. And we know that's a separate process from the Department of Buildings. You have to go through Department of Energy and Environment to do that. But mold is a huge issue and it's very complicated for tenants to, and I'll shut up and let tenants speak for themselves, but I know from tenants that I've spoken with that it's very complicated to have to go through DOEE to request this mold inspection, but then you also got this leak that you want to get addressed with DOB. So it's constantly that back and forth, and that could lead to a slower, remediation. So I'm gonna open it up to everyone else. If they want to share any more information on the things I just mentioned, add anything. And again, we want to make sure we get to that enforcement process, but I think we're gonna give some space for that.
Yeah, and I don't know, I know maybe Laura or Jan, if either of you want to talk to like the need that you've seen for building wide, having a coordinated building wide inspection process. Laura, yeah, feel free to come off mute if you can, Laura.
Hi, yes, thank you so much. Our building was lucky enough to get a proactive inspection. And so I guess I want to say, first of all, thank you to the Department of Buildings because it is so important to get that inspection. And it was so helpful. But in terms of our experience, I think the things that I think could have made the process more productive was that when I guess the way that the DOB notified residents of the inspection, the oncoming inspections was a little bit abrupt in the sense that tenants don't necessarily know who the Department of Buildings are and what their sort of purview is or their jurisdiction is in respect to people's apartments. And so we had residents who came home and found on their doors a notice that says like, we're the government and we're coming into your apartment, which for some people can be uncomfortable. So I think it would be really helpful to kind of just have more information available to proactively to residents who are getting the inspections to know what people are looking for, what is the purpose of the inspection, why the Department of Buildings is there. And specifically, one thing that we found going door to door to tenants, prepping them for their visits from the Department of Buildings was sort of giving tenants a sense of what are the housing code violations that they should be pointing out, and especially housing code violations that maybe aren't apparent from a visual inspection. So for instance, when the Department of Buildings came to visit to do proactive inspections in my building, we happened to have a hot water outage at the time, but tenants had to be prepped to make sure that inspectors came and to show inspectors, turn on their hot water and then show inspectors how long it took to get on. And I think, things like that, that maybe for, things that should be pointed out if they're there that a, inspector maybe wouldn't know to look for if it wasn't pointed out by residents and things like that, I think would be very helpful. The other issue that we had is that a lot of my neighbors are voucher holders who have housing DCHA inspections, and there was some confusion from residents who are subject to DCHA housing inspections about, what is the difference between a DCHA housing inspection and a Department of Buildings inspection. So it would just be really wonderful to have just a more proactive approach that explains what the Department of Buildings is and what they're there to do when they do these proactive inspections. But most of all, thank you so much. It's been like, it's so important what you guys are doing, and we just want to make sure that it's productive as possible when you do appear.
Thank you, Laura. I'm adding that too, just, because that's a really good recommendation. And I definitely have heard, people like, I heard I had an inspection from housing or, and not sure like the differences. So thank you. Jan, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So, thank you for having us here today. Mr. Parsons, as the president of the 2M Tenants Association, my biggest concern are customer service and your workflow, right? You stated earlier about, some inspectors saying they can't get into fix, or landlords saying they can't get into fix. A lot of our tenants work shift work, they're teachers, they can't be home to answer the door. Do you do, inspections on weekends, on Saturdays at least?
So we let you request your time window now. So your current form allows you to request morning or evening.
When did that start?
That's been in place for a few months now. I don't remember what month it started.
Okay.
We briefly piloted weekend inspections because we had some contract money for people that would show up on weekends at the end of the fiscal year. There is not money for permanent weekend inspections right now. So right now the solution is find your most convenient window, and it is a burden, right? Like when you're waiting for the Comcast guy, or when you're waiting for the guy to pick up your car and take it to the shop. So we understand that's a burden, but obviously we can't get in without you guys.
Right. So some tenants will leave me their keys and I'll let them into their apartment, but for me, it's about the customer service. I'm not surprised Mr. Williamson is here today. I know at 2M, we've got a lot of problems, right? Mike Jenkins, Gregory King, Mr. Williamson, they've all been to our building, but those are good guys, but some are better than others, right? They'll see that pictures are not always fully taken, the report is not properly filled out. So I would love to see, is there any way we can implement a post-inspection survey so we can tell you, number one, were they on time? Were they professional? Did they take all the pictures? Is there any way to remediate when I've seen reports that are partially filled out and they did not get to the main aspects of what this person is up for an eviction for, because the landlord will not fix that particular issue. And when I look at the report, it's missing from the report. So how can we get to these reports and say, okay, you missed a spot, you missed something?
So we do have customer feedback. It's not, we've gone through a couple different feedback things, and the one we have now is not identified with a particular service incident.
Okay.
But we used to have one that was, and then we moved to this one. I'll tell the folks that are actually in charge of that in customer service that this is a vote for go back to identifying, where this request came from.
But is that going to happen at the end? Like at what point? Because the customer gets the report. At what point can they say, hey, something's missing out of this? And then because I'm talking about two different things.
Yeah.
The report being incompletely filled out, but then also the professionalism of the person who's come to your building. Because many times I have gotten a report that says, a reminder that said they'll be there at 10, they show up at 2. And another thing that's happening is if I don't wait in my lobby and catch them, they know me in our building. Your inspector will come to our building, and then our concierge will call the landlord and say, hey, DOB is here. And then they're walking around with the landlord, and the person who requested the inspection is not there. So they're giving you guys their side of the story. Or there was times Mr. Williamson came to the building and we're being followed by our landlord. So I need to understand for our residents, what safeguards are there that they're, number one, going to be serviced by the actual inspector? And then two, how do we know that the landlord is not trying to intercede and say, okay, this is not true before the report can be filed?
So let me go back to one prior thing that I don't want to lose, and then I'll talk about the landlord. Remember that, you know, our guys are trained in the building code. And they're also trained in, the building code itself is 4,800 pages or some odd. I did like add up all the additions once to get that approximate number. And so we have a subset of things that we cite, and it covers almost anything that can be, you know, that can go wrong with a tenant's property, but it doesn't cover everything. And also, there are times when there's a difference of opinion between the inspector and the tenant about whether something's a violation. So I don't know without looking at a specific instance whether that's one of those situations, or of course, obviously, we can sometimes make mistakes. But remember that we are deciding what's a violation. We are not just passing on a tenant complaint. So I hear your story about the landlord, and remember from my presentation, the landlord will and has to be involved. So I don't personally feel that uncomfortable that the landlord is hanging around and, you know, chattering at us. Like, they will chatter at us no matter what, right? We're never going to avoid that phase. You know, if it doesn't happen while the guy is out there, then it's going to happen after the report is issued. So I would not be terribly concerned about that. Our guys are trained to go out and to look at what's broken and to cite the things that are broken. The landlords, one of the few times that I think the landlord giving live information might change something is if a repair is already in progress, then the inspector has discretion not to cite it, because the whole goal is to get the thing fixed. And if the landlord says, you know, here's the receipt for the part, or, you know, here's the invoice, we are literally already addressing this problem, then sometimes we don't issue the fine because we know it's already being handled. So I wouldn't be terribly concerned that they're putting in their piece. Tell your folks to put in their piece as well. Our guys will look at the evidence of what's broken and they will cite the things that are violations.
I know I threw a lot at you at one point, but what about the inspector walking around with the landlord and this person's taking the day off because they know they have a DOB inspection, and then they find out, oh, we were already there, we walked around with the landlord. How do you remediate that?
And they just never went to the apartment?
They never either went to it could be a common area issue or anything, I don't know. But it's happened before where the inspector walked around with the inspector didn't come on time, or they went to the store, it was a window time, like they said they were gonna be there at 10, they come at 2, they're not there, they have to go pick up their kids, something. But I have seen several situations where the inspector walked around with a landlord or a maintenance person without the actual tenant being present.
Can I offer a solution?
Well, let me just say, and then yes, I'm happy to hear it. I'm happy to hear that. The inspector should be reaching out to the complainant. In specific cases where that doesn't happen, it's sort of hard to address in general, but in specific cases where that doesn't happen, the complainant should reach out to us and say, hey, it looks like this happened, but I was never contacted. It'll be referred to the manager, they will investigate it. So it shouldn't be happening without you all knowing about it. Right, what was your question?
I've made multiple complaints to my landlord. I mean, really good at it, but I think your automated system is extremely effective, like the whole signing up, it's been flawless for me. What would be great, because that's flawless, but there's no person, it's a computer. If the person that's coming to your house to inspect the violation or whatever, the night before, the day before, whatever, hey, this is Jill, I'll be there, I don't know my time frame yet, but I'll give you a call, set up that communication right away, because it makes these frustrated tenants it just kind of gives you, you know, whether you take the day off or not, you got kids involved. Like both people's schedules matter and it's just a huge peace of mind.
And while that would be helpful, there's times when inspector changes. Right? It'll say Jenkins is coming, but then Patterson shows up.
Yes,
So-
and
I didn't check my email, that kind of thing.
so I'll give you, there's a reason we can't do that right now. And I'm not saying we never can, but because there's a specific change we made that makes that impossible. And the change is that the inspectors are assigned the morning of. So in order to, we do 50,000 some housing and vacant inspections over the course of the whole year. And in order to make sure that we get all of them covered, right now our system, every night, it says, all right, here's all the inspections for tomorrow, and it does some computer stuff to arrange them in a way that we're not sending a guy to the four corners of the earth. And when it's done calculating that based on the actual inspections for the day, then it assigns the guys. So they're finding out morning of, that's why they can't call you the night before.
They
Although,
call you like at some point, I'm 3 appointments out or something, just kind of keep a track of their appointments. It's a pain in the butt, I know.
I mean, they're supposed to reach out before they come and let you know what's going on. We don't, mandate a particular schedule, in part because their schedules can change.
Never know.
That's part of why sometimes, sometimes the guy calls out and we have to cover. Sometimes the guy gets held up and we have to cover. So, we understand that's always frustrating, but it's frustrating for us too, and we're trying to minimize it as much as we can.
Hello, so I am here as a resident and a property manager. I'm a property manager right here in Fort Lee. And so I have a question on the management side. In the past, I've seen where the inspector will come to the office or give us a call, a heads up to let us know that they're on the property so that we can walk with them and address any issues that can be fixed right away. Is that something that is routine or is just at the inspector's discretion? That's the first question.
And there's a similar question on the chat
Yes, I was
that
just getting
asks,
ready to.
are the managers and landlords called to tell them the inspection time?
So they are supposed to reach out, but also the information is imperfect. Remember, we don't have a secret database of all the property managers. The tenant may give us some information, may not. So, it doesn't surprise me that experience is not gonna be uniform, but they are supposed to reach out if they can.
Okay, and I just wanted to ask a question also, one of the questions the young lady asked, as far as if a resident is not home, we as managers, because we have the key, if the resident has made the complaint, should we be using the key for the inspector to get in, or should the resident be home?
Well, it's a complicated question. And generally speaking, we like to have the consent of the resident to get.
Right,
So,
so if they sign the
unless
paper that you all send over,
Right, that's why
It's
we
okay
have
for
the
us
consent
to
forms.
open
Yeah,
the door with the key.
that's why we have the consent forms. If you've provided some sort of notice under your lease that's consistent with law, then maybe that is also sufficient. But generally speaking, our guys aren't going to want to go in unless there's a consent form or someone saying, hey, come in.
Sorry, for my own edification, what consent form are we talking about?
There's a form, it's like one page, it says, I consent for DOB to come in and inspect my unit. We use it a lot in proactive inspections because that's a case where, people do have conflicts. We are trying to come out at one time and go through a significant number of units. So it's pretty common for people to say, I want you to come in, I signed the form, management has the key or my neighbor has the key or something.
At what point in the requesting an inspection process are you able to digitally sign a form of consent? When does that happen?
That doesn't happen in the complaint process. It's generally used in proactive or if there is a sort of special effort that has a building wide.
Can you define?
Yeah, and I
proactive?
think
What does that
it's a
mean?
different inspection process when you're not requesting.
There's a building wide inspection, that we do, so proactive inspections happen. Anywhere from every 2 years to 5 years, depending upon the size of the building. Smaller buildings, the time frame may be a little longer. Larger buildings, such as yours, Dan, those inspections may happen. I don't know if it's every 2 or every 3 years automatically. As I think you've alluded to, there are times when, we see a building. This goes back to what I was saying before about, making sure that you're reporting issues and that you're requesting inspections. But, we may, like someone like myself may request that we perform a building-wide proactive inspection on an apartment where we are seeing multiple violations, we're just seeing things, consistently. And so that's where the consent form comes in, because as Keith said, if you got 200 units, there's no way for, us to coordinate with every single individual. So we say we're coming out between the 19th and the 25th. Can you give your consent for your landlord to open up your unit so that we can inspect them?
I'm sorry, is there a database that you can see how, when a building's had their last proactive inspection?
Sort of. That information lives in our Acela database. It's not on a dashboard, and it's not like, the data team can figure it out, but it wouldn't be super easy to put it on a dashboard.
Okay.
I want to say two quick things. One is, I mean, we would definitely want tenants to be home for request-based inspections because only the person who lives in the unit is really gonna know all of the issues with it. Or somebody that they designate and have given that list. One thing that was put on here, on the previous slide was, building-based, being able to have a process for, to request building-based property-wide inspections. In the past, we were able to do this with DOB, and it was like, as you said, like a requested proactive inspection. I think there's a big tie-in with strategic enforcement and like slumlord enforcement in allowing like a tenant association or an attorney or a tenant organizer to request a property-based inspection. Because they're identifying, a place that has a number of issues and can do some of that coordination. As Jan was saying, sometimes somebody gives her the key. So I'd like to encourage DOB to like look at that process and be able to be open to getting, suggestions on places. And I don't think it needs to be 100% of units or anything like that, similar to proactive. It could be a percentage and any tenants who actually want their unit to be inspected. But I think that would be a way to identify some of these really, some of the conditions where there's worse conditions.
But question about the inspection part.
Yeah, and I think
Okay,
there's a
and
couple
I was
in
gonna
chat.
say,
You know what? Yeah, if I can give a second,
Okay.
let me read one that is about this part. My tenant association has been happy with the changes DOB made to the online inspection request form. Oops, I lost it. But, sorry, it's hard to read. I think what they're saying is it's not, but they have one neighbor who's blind, and we also know the actual request form is only in English. And so not everyone can conveniently access them. When we call 311 to schedule, he's hung up on repeatedly. It's a negative experience. Okay, but he can call DOB directly, right?
I would recommend he call DOB directly. 311, we don't have direct control over 311. That's under Office of Unified Communications. Of course, we're one government, right? But 311 is a little harder to deal with hard cases because we've only programmed 2 specific cases into 311, which is illegal construction and vacant property. So if you call up with something outside of that, you're gonna just be generically referred to DOB if you indicate you're going to DOB. So you might as well start with us, right? You'll skip a step. So that would be my recommendation there.
Somebody asked about the building code, and somebody else responded and gave them a link to DC regs, to DC, the building code in the DC municipal regs. That sound right? I will say, I'll echo what Keith said earlier, which is just that like, if there was a problem in something that came with your home, it's probably a code violation. And it's 4,000 or whatever pages, you don't need to know it. But if it was there when you moved in, it's the landlord's responsibility. And usually it's a code violation if it's not working. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, if it's broken, it's either a specific code violation. My favorite joke about the code is that it has different provisions for the height a hanger can hang below a light bulb in a closet if the light bulb is an incandescent light bulb and if the light bulb is a fluorescent light bulb. That's how
specific.
That's how granular the code gets. And in addition, the property maintenance code, which we use for housing code inspections, have a bunch of provisions that are sort of generic. They're like, an electrical thing is broken, and our guys are trained to use that if there's some sort of thing so specific that they can't find the specific site. They just say like electrical thing broken, and they know what it is.
Just ask a question about what you were saying, Lisa, about the tenant association. Can tenant association people, so only the resident can file the claim, not somebody on behalf of a lot of residents. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and so when we work at places where there's a lot of residents, and it seems to me, and I know this is something we could talk about more, like, could be some efficiency in, having one day or something that there's a lot, all the inspections are happening.
So the tenants association cannot file on behalf of a tenant, is that what you said?
Well, I was talking about a property-wide inspection.
Well, that's what I was
But, yeah.
referring to too, because I live on a housing property. And the Department of Buildings came there and did like this big inspection, right? I don't know, I'm glad.
Oh, that might have been
that I-
proactive. Yeah.
I'm glad I got the email to go and look at the stuff now, so I can see, but, I was just wondering, as a tenant association president, can I, along with, sit with residents and we put it together collectively and do it that way? How would that look?
So, I mean, the way I would say it is, there's not a public open process to have a building wide. We have building wides all the time in proactive. We sometimes do them case by case for other reasons. So if you want to reach out about that, you can. The challenge and the reason we haven't tried to have a generic building wide request is, one, it's going to be hard on the requester, right? You would have to get all the people lined up, right? Because we need to get into every unit you want us to inspect. And two, it's going to be hard on us because everyone is going to request a building. And we get a lot of these requests anyway, even though we don't like put it out there for people to do it. And we find they get requested in a lot of different types of buildings. So it's sometimes a very terrible building. It is sometimes a very okay-ish building where people are unhappy. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of challenges around it. That's why it's not a formal process. It's not something that I'm adamantly opposed to, but these challenges would have to be resolved if we ever wanted to have a sort of open public building-wide request process.
That's the question I asked earlier. I didn't get a chance to ask. But where we live at in our apartment, if something breaks and the maintenance come up and look at it, and so have the manager, why should we have to keep reporting that the situation has not been fixed? Example, we have a two-bedroom apartment. Our apartment flooded in the back room. Maintenance came up, they looked at it, you can see where the water came from, you can see where the buildings actually coming down, right? Why should we have to report it when the manager came up and the maintenance came up and see there's a problem? And nobody has fixed it yet.
Well,
You good, you're
You
good.
don't- like, if you've told them once and they don't do anything, you could definitely call us, right? I'm not gonna say don't call us. I will encourage you to keep reporting it because you don't know what's going on their back end, right? You know, maybe they wrote it down in a note and then he lost it and he forgot about it, right? Like, there's a little bit of chipping in to get the thing done, right?
Okay.
And another thing, right, like maybe you said, hey, this thing's broken, this pipe's broken. Maybe he looked at it, he thought it was a leak above in the apartment above. Maybe he even sent a guy and the guy did stuff in the apartment above and he thought I fixed it. And he doesn't know that it's still broken until you report that it's broken again, right? So there's a number of different communications things where it can be beneficial to just keep badgering them about it. But if you've told them once, you can call us. Our request is tell them first, and then you can call us.
In the building I live in, I'm pretty sure a lot of the tenants been called. There's an issue where the fire alarm goes off. The fire alarm tells us not to use the elevator. But we have elderly people that's in the building that has walkers and wheelchairs. That's the only thing they can use is the elevator to get out the building. And I know a couple of the tenants called DOB to have somebody come in to inspect the stairwell where they can actually put something in the stairwell for these people to get out of the building. Cause the building I used to work with the security for the building. I actually literally had to carry someone out the building even though the alarm went off faulty.
Mhm.
I literally had to carry somebody down steps to get them out the building.
Yes, that is true. You're not supposed to exit through an elevator in a fire emergency. You know, the building should have either shelter in place, places or area of rescue places in the stairwells for people who can't exit. It could have, in our building, they got like a little, I don't know what it's called. It's like a little device that you can strap the person to and it helps you bring them down the steps
But that would
safely.
need-
In our building,
That would need to be on every floor in our building, because
Yeah,
on every floor is somebody with a walker or a wheelchair.
it's like one floor is like 3 people that had walkers. And they got on the elevator because they can't get down. They had no choice but to get on the elevator because they can't get down the steps. And
And that particular day, I went down with them.
So that's not a code issue.
Yeah.
Or,
I mean,
How
well,
often, have you had the issues with the elevator? Is it like a one-time occurrence or is it something?
It's not the elevator per se, it's the smoke detector, our alarms in the building.
when
It goes off frequently.
when the
When
alarm,
it goes off, it stops the elevator?
it doesn't stop
Don't stop it.
it doesn't stop the elevator, but they tell us, the announcement that comes, it tells them not to use the elevator, use the stairs. We have people in the building that have wheelchairs and have walkers that can't take the stairs, so they have to get on the elevator.
So the problem is the alarm system is faulty, that it goes off like,
Yes, the fire alarm, but it's also still the safety measure of those with walkers and wheelchairs getting out the building. Because we don't even have, cause I used to be security for the building. We done had instances, like I said, I done had instances where I literally had to carry someone down the steps. Because it tells everybody to exit the building till fire department come in and see that it's not an actual fire.
right.
And it always
All right,
stems from the 11th floor. from the
might have you
fire.
all talk and see if you can brainstorm this one afterwards.
And I think that's a
Um,
huge issue is accessibility, so we can definitely
Yeah,
talk about that.
yeah, because maybe if you all talk a little more, you can see if there is something there. There are a bunch of questions in the chat, mainly around enforcement, so, and I know that's been a big concern. I do want to highlight, one thing that was coming up a bunch when we've had these conversations is just about having more, like, kind of easy to understand, accessible information, for tenants. So Jan already talked about, and Laura talked about the, what is a proactive housing code inspection? One thing that folks were saying is when they actually have the inspection, couldn't the inspector give the person a piece of paper that says, you know, explains the timeline, the options, who you follow up with if there's not a repair, you know, that whole process. So I just wanted to pull out that one from here. And then another idea folks had relatedly is like, you know, when you're getting a package, it tells you where you are in the process. We're waiting, you know, it's being packaged, it's shipped. And so could there be more easy to understand information? You know, maybe that's part of the dashboard that's kind of like, here's where you are. You know, there's been an inspection, you've gotten the NOI has been sent out, landlord has 14 days, 60 days to repair, whatever. Now it's a reinspection, so really just making it easy for people to see, here's where we are and here's what's next. So, let's go, though, I think, to, enforcement. And I think there's a few questions in the chat, about enforcement, right?
Michelle had one.
Okay, and there's one up above here. Yeah, so there's, you know, Funke is saying, oh, there was a question about, are unlicensed, uncertified contractors allowed to make repairs? So there's been a couple of questions about just like repairs not being fully done or not being done well. And how do you know if a repair has been done? So I guess I'll pause there so you can say that kind of thing. People are saying, you know, like, how does it get proven that the repair's been done and been done fully?
Yeah, so not every repair requires a licensed professional. And you know, some of them do. And the way DOB controls for that is if it's the type of repair that requires a licensed professional, they're required to be involved in the permit process. My advice for a tenant would be not to worry as much about that. I mean, the important thing is that they're making the repair and that the repair is sufficient. And we do have an abatement review process where either, like, the only way something gets marked as fixed is if we went out and we looked at it and we saw that it was fixed, or we looked at evidence submitted by the landlord that was convincing to us that indicated it was fixed. And if we have any doubt about the paper, the pictures they send us, then we either schedule a reinspection or we ask them for more information. So embedded in that is fixed good enough. We do say not fixed good enough all the time. We're like, that wasn't repaired in a workmanlike manner. You need to, you know, you need to go back and you need to do it again. Now this is another sort of place where I'd caution about differences in opinion, though, right? And I'll tell a story. Well, I'll tell a real story, and if the real customer's here, they can jump in and tell me what they think about this. But there's a case where there was some damage to a countertop, and we cited it, and we issued the NOI, and the landlord said, all right, I want to repair this countertop, and I'm gonna go in, and you know how you can get like an old tub reglazed or something. They had a thing to reglaze this countertop. And the complainant said, no, I want the countertop replaced. And it was like a nicer countertop than the reglazing. And so they didn't want that to happen. But the building code doesn't say you have to get the particular fix that you want. It says the fix has to be workmanlike, it has to be sufficient for making the repair. And so just know that there are sometimes those situations where we say that's good enough and the tenant may disagree, but we're judging based on the code and we're judging based on whether it's workmanlike. So there are things that are code sufficient and workmanlike that an individual tenant may not like.
And what if the tenant, you know, just says like, actually, this wasn't fixed? Do they have to ask for another inspection?
if the.
You know, maybe the
easiest-
landlord submitted a picture and it was true or not true, who knows, but for some reason it's not fixed.
The easiest thing to do is submit another inspection, because that's literally the fastest way. There's no like secret shortcut way to get us to come back out. If you really think they lied to us, tell us and tell us why. Because a lot of times things break and then things break again, and it doesn't mean they weren't fixed. It sometimes means it fixed and it was an old thing and it broke again. And just call us out and we will cite it again, and they should fix it again. If you really think that they are submitting false stuff to us through the portal, let us know. We will look at it. It happens. It is very infrequent, but we will look at it.
I swear that happened, that probably was to him apartment. It did happen.
Sorry.
Here and then here, or, yeah, there's two of you.
I'm gonna say, so with using the database, should you be able to see each specific fine? Or is it just the ones that's been abated?
Well, we can see everything on our
So I'm
side.
saying, if I listen to the database, should I be able to see, like, say, for my unit?
Yeah.
Should I be able to see each specific fine? Or is it just the ones that's been fixed?
It's the ones that haven't been fixed on the violations and abatement dashboard. And on the enforcement dashboard, it's the ones that haven't been paid are the ones you'll see.
Mr. Parsons, I just have to go back to what you just said. In our case, the resident had been shown a model apartment, and then the granite was broken at her countertop
Mhm.
for the unit she actually moved into, and they felt it was okay enough.
They
to
were in the
proceed.
room?
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sure it's 2M apartment, shout out to 2M apartment, you always got some problems.
It's actually not.
Oh, another one?
This one, but this is the
I'm sure you're
same issue.
familiar with us, right?
Yeah.
So in that case where she was shown a different unit, and now she's got a bait and switch to the apartment that she did move into, and it's not satisfactory. It was the granite had a sharp ridge, and they tried to patch it up, but that's not what she was shown when she moved into the apartment. Is that okay? Is that what you feel is a?
I'm gonna say, I think that may or may not be DOB, but she probably has another complaint there. Like, I would talk to an attorney, like a tenant attorney, cause it's
And
not
we-
always DOB.
And we do have guidance on the limits of our authority and navigating legal disputes. So I encourage you to look for that on our website. Or, when is this a problem we can help with? When is this a problem where you gotta talk to an attorney?
Okay, so, my question is specifically about some of the notices of infraction. So I'll just give you an example of the client that I have. So this particular person, about over a year ago, made a complaint to DOB for the housing violation. Because there was a putrid smell coming from the base of her toilet and she could not flush the toilet. She had to pour water physically into the toilet to flush. DOB came out, issued the citation. It was the, I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but the 24-hour one. So in my lawyer brain, I'm like, this is great. You have this proof of this violation. They have to fix this within 24 hours. Well, I'm sure you can believe why I'm telling this story. It is now over a year later and she still has the same problem, but compounded by the fact that now her landlord is filing to evict her, right? So I'm sure you can kind of see that, where that friction is, right? Where you have someone who's complained, they didn't get another inspection, so they complained again. And Jan, please correct me if I'm wrong here. They complained again, got another violation, but where is the fix? It's still not fixed. I don't know the status of the fine because frankly, until today, I didn't know about the dashboard system. And I just tried to find it, but there's so many of that particular building
Yeah,
that you
it's hard to-
can't.
And in
find
this
that one.
case, this was one of the cases where not enough pictures in the report was not filled out properly.
And on top of that too, when you're dealing with something like a putrid smell from a toilet and the toilet not flushing, how do you capture that in the photo? Right? Like you can't capture a smell in a photo.
Yeah.
You can,
And you can smell it from the hallway.
I mean, it really was to the point where you open the front door to the unit and it hits you in the face, right? So I think my issue is twofold, right? One, where is the enforcement to the landlord to get that fixed on time? I'm sure that my client wants the landlord to get fined, but more than that, I think she wants to be able to live with some dignity and not have to pour water into her toilet to use the bathroom. And two, what can DOB do to protect against the retaliation? This is something where this is a person who's been consistently paying their rent for years. Now they're facing an eviction and, you know, they want to leave now, so that is what it is, but what are you doing to prevent or at least discourage that type of retaliation? Because from your presentation that I saw, it sounds like you're not, as a landlord, you're not really facing any consequences until after an Office of Administrative Hearings, hearing. And if any of you all have had an OAH hearing, you know that that takes forever and a day. So I know it was long-winded, but what do you do in that situation?
So there's a lot of things in there, and I'm gonna pivot to something exciting that I'm working on that addresses some of them, and we can go back to others if you like. You raised the issue that the landlord doesn't face consequences until after the OAH hearing. That's 100% true, and that's based on the civil infractions. That's all in the law.
Sure.
There is another piece of, you can call it enforcement if you want. There's another remedy that the Department of Buildings has, and we use it on grass and weeds all the time. We go out, well, yeah, this made your list too, so I'll highlight it here. If it's grass and weeds and you don't fix it after we give you notice, we'll go out and we'll weed whack it. And boy, howdy, is it the best weed whacking you have ever gotten. We will give you the, you know, it's a price that's posted on our website, it's fully disclosed, but it is definitely not as cheap as you could get like your nephew to do it. And we send the bill and the grass is fixed, right? Like the grass is already dressed. We send you the bill. It doesn't go through any sort of hearing. It basically just becomes a tax lien on the property automatically. Right, it's great. And not only that, we know that we analyzed our recovery, and our recovery from this type of lien is actually much higher than our recovery from trying to get fines.
Sure.
So more money, we know the thing is fixed, less messing around with the hearing. All of that's really great stuff. The big downside is it requires us to foot the bill, front the money, go mow the grass. And that's why, you know, it's easy to do with the grass mowing. We have a little team of guys who pick up trash and mow grass. They can do some other things. And I am looking to grow this capacity, right? Because this is a track that is superior in results to the fine and try to convince the landlord through fines track. But it's gonna require building some institutional capacity. It's gonna require more money being directed into that track. And, you know, stay tuned. Well, let me pause there and see if you have questions or what you want to circle back on.
Well, I don't know if I have necessarily a question about that. I think that's a great idea. I obviously can see, you know, fronting the bill to make repairs inside of buildings can get very expensive, but that doesn't stop you from the lien process, does it?
So
if something goes unabated, is that an option?
Under current law, our position, and I've asked to see if I can change this, but under current law, our position is we can't put a lien for the fine until it goes to the OAH process. Once we get that judgment, we do file it as a lien. You have to wait for that whole process to play out. If the law changed in some way that let me file liens quicker, sooner, in more cases, it would be terrific.
Are you looking at any other options that aren't the lien process?
That is once we get to the lien process, it's actually pretty good because the property can't run away, right? The nice thing about a lien is you put it on a property, the property can't run away. There are some weaknesses if you know, if it's not a tax lien that gets collected quickly, then maybe you just let it sit there, if it's just like a judgment or something, if you don't care about selling it, but then eventually it gets sold and it gets paid off. You know, so that is not a terrible option if you can get there quickly.
Okay.
I'm gonna, I think, read a few of the chats. I wanna let, there's both comments and questions. And we have a couple of, some other enforcement ideas that, you know, you've already seen, I'm sure heard about it other times, but see what we get to. So, Funke did say, my landlady has been fined over $70,000. And the case taken by DOB to Office of Administrative Hearings, but done nothing. Fines remain on the dashboard unabated, and I continue to live under horrible conditions that instigated the inspections in the first place. I even filed a motion to intervene in the OAH hearing. It's like a little. And nothing has been done, and I have not heard back. And actually, this was a question that came up from a few people about why are tenants not included in the OAH hearings? And how can tenants actually intervene in those? So I'm not sure if I should pause or keep reading all of these.
Well, yeah, I'll jump in on,
Yeah.
on that one a little bit. I mean, it is absolutely correct that one of the big challenges is if you have a landlord who doesn't do anything and doesn't pay any of the money, the end result at best is gonna be, we'll eventually get a bunch of judgments, we'll file those as liens on the property, but if it's just a property they're not doing anything with, they'll just sit there. The escalation that we can do, but we don't have a lot of resources for, and they're not even our resources, is we can get the Office of the Attorney General to try to file a variety of civil lawsuits. But usually that's for big buildings, big groups of buildings, very, very, very problematic, worst of the worst style situations. It is hard to imagine a place where we have enough resources to look at every unabated violation, and if it's over like 90 days, send it to civil court, right? Like that's probably not gonna happen. On the specific question of intervening in OAH cases, that is a possible option. I would kind of caution against it just because I think the reason tenants probably want to be in that hearing is probably to try to hash things out with their landlord. They want to feel like they're going to say their piece. But remember that the only end point in OAH is the judge says, you gotta pay the fine, you don't gotta pay the fine. And our attorneys have discretion to put on whatever case they want, but our system is built around proving that whole case without needing the tenant, right? We have our photos, we have our inspectors trained, we have our processes. So we have a system where we can get there under our own power. And so and even if the tenant gets to testify, the OAH judge can't do things like order the violations be fixed. They don't currently have injunctive powers. That has to go to some form of civil court. They can't like give the tenant money, right? They can't really do anything other than say, these violations occurred and you owe the fine because you didn't fix it. So I definitely sympathize with tenants who want to kind of jump into the process. And I think sometimes it's happened. I tried about 400 cases myself before I took my goal, and occasionally I did bring in the tenants, but it's not likely to be the standard process for all of these reasons.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Funke. I put that question in the chat. I hear you. I've been hearing you all evening. And my concern really is most of this inspections are over a year old, as you've heard with the lady with the bathroom issue. I have a bathroom issue that has lingered. I mean, there was a point in time I couldn't take a bath for 10 days. I had to call the fire service. I ended up in the ER because the water became putrid. It started reeking off, chemicals. I have lung issues. It's quite bad. And all I was told by DOB is that, oh, it's not an emergency, and that they're giving the landlord 60 days to fix. This is a very big issue because I'm noticing that the few things that get abated in my property wait till like the 55th, 57th day, to attend to one or two things. And typically because they know that DOB is coming back for a reinspection. I dare say I've had one or two times where whilst they're fixing, things in the house, DOB walks through the door. And they're only doing that because they know DOB is coming. So it makes the tenant look like, we're lying. Because by the time they come in, it's like, oh, it's fixed. Oh, then next. I'm like, no, I've lived in this, horrible thing since I reported, since you inspected for months, for weeks, and nothing was done till, the landlord was informed, as we were, that they're coming for either the fresh inspection or a reinspection. As I'm speaking to you now, it's been over a month. HVAC in this house has packed up because the weather has been really, has been somewhat cool. Nothing has been done to address this issue. DOB's been out, they've issued the fines, nothing is happening. We're going into the, heat, what's it called, season very soon. Fall has started, still nothing done. So for me, I appreciate DOB for the setup, for even listening to tenants, for giving tenants the opportunity, to call on inspections and everything. But I dare say, with all due respect to everyone there, that it's more for me a theoretical, agency more than practical. I did commend DOB at the last fora that we had before today's because one of the class one, the 24-hour emergency one, smoke alarm wasn't done as usual, but DOB sent, technicians over and they've done that twice in this building. So I do commend DOB for that. And I know it probably, would have been a heavy bill given to the landlady, but every other thing undone. I'm very well known at DOB customer service because I'm always calling and I'm always requesting for these inspections. And these fines are always, they keep getting out. It was almost 100,000 at a point till a few things were done and it's brought it down. It's still on your dashboard. Over 30, whatever, infractions, it's still there. So whilst I hear everything that is being said and about the intervening in court, the reason I wanted to intervene, number one, I'm an attorney, so I do know why I want to intervene. But secondly, without us being there and the court asks, so what have you done? And landlord says, oh, I've done it. How do you verify that? If the person that called for the inspection isn't there to give a true situation of what's going on. So that's one question. The second question, I put it up. I don't see it there. I don't know, if it was taken down or if, it's been recorded somewhere else, is about the liens in your on-site guidance, regarding fines and enforcement and things like that. It is said that when it gets to 20,000, a lien is placed on the property. Nothing is, I mean, there's this sense of, you know, um, time wasting on part of the tenant, for want of a better word, in even seeking some of these inspections because nothing gets done. And I don't know. That's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to come on camera to say that, I hear you. We appreciate DOBs. All said, if this wasn't available, I don't even know where tenants would be. So for that wise, I say, thanks to everyone that works at DOB, but there's a whole lot still to be done, especially in the enforcement area. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna read a couple of some of the other stuff in chat because it really does relate to what you were saying. And I think we definitely want to be done by 8. But this is, we can have more conversations, but I'll just go ahead and read these so that, so Christian said, I'm concerned with with enforcement measures. It appears landlords have the option to pay and not fix, or not pay, not fix, and just face collection efforts. Tenants are left in a repeated cycle to call DOB. How can we work collaboratively to propose better enforcement? Perhaps owner's basic business license is suspended, or the fines hinder them from conducting business and transactions with DOB until all the issues are resolved. Tenants also should be able to receive the NOI, not just the owner, and not rely on the portal. Often these inspections are crucial to have evidence of when having to use it in litigation or action against the landlord. There was a question about, I believe, with displacement, not being told how long they would be out or why. I think I was asking which property. And then, let's see. We answered that. When cited violations are not abated and DOB moves the case to OAH, how do they keep tenants in the loop? This was answered, this was answered. This was answered. Okay, licensed and bonded. We answered that. When landlords state they ordered parts, they should notify DOB of the name of the company with contact information with the scope of work to verify. They should be able to present that info to the inspector while on site. For frequent elevator issues, the inspector should ask maintenance logbooks, inspection of the elevator cabs, along with any life safety inspections, list of deficiencies. And Andrea, did you have?
Well, it's on the recommendations. I know we only got a little bit of time, but I just wanted to know more about the nuisance abatement fund, and because we're working at a property right now, and it's actually the property that Ms. Harris was talking about, Benning Park. So definitely have had lots of DOB inspectors out to that property. And the number one thing we're hearing from the management company is that there's just a lot of financial concerns. And so we're just wondering, is there a way for DOB, especially because they've recently had another emergency where there was, oh my goodness, there was a sewage leak and a gas leak at the same time. So all the residents had to be evacuated. So we're just trying to figure out, like, is there a possibility for DOB's nuisance abatement fund to be used to help speed up repairs, especially in these emergency situations?
Yeah, and just to mention the building where folks were evacuated from, this is an issue that, DOB has been aware of for months with like standing water in the basement of a building. And then it evidently, the leak that was causing that caused a sewage leak. But, it was inevitable. We are like, at some very soon point, this building is gonna be closed and people are gonna be moved out and it's gonna be worse and more expensive. And so, yeah.
Yeah, so theoretically, yes, but with an enormous caveat. I mean, the nuisance abatement fund, as I was talking about, can be used to do things as small as weed whack the grass, and as large as knocking down houses is another thing that it can be used for. But it itself is pretty small, and these types of things get really expensive really fast. So, you all, I've said I want to sort of build some of this capacity in DOB. I would encourage all y'all in the advocacy community to sort of think hard about the monetary side of it and think about the incentives around it, right? Because if you theoretically gave me an infinite amount of money, you could have a system where DOB fixes everything. But we don't have an infinite amount of money. And when I do it, like I said, we don't do it the sort of market cheapest way. We do it the way we do it. So, there are some hard trade-off decisions to be made about how to deploy that.
And the money when it's paid off, does the money go into the general fund or back into the nuisance abatement fund?
The money from those types of abatements goes back into the nuisance abatement fund, but without getting too weedy, the budgeting process doesn't guarantee that it stays there. But it does technically go back to the nuisance abatement fund. We do have a little more control over that than the general fund.
Well, there are some additional ideas we have here, and I think, maybe we can have another meeting to talk about more like specifically enforcement and things that you all are looking at. I mean, the ideas that we've been saying, none of them I don't think are new, so. And I think some have had some progress and other ones have stayed ideas. Yeah, did you wanna add?
I was gonna ask, who has discretion over that fund? And what kind of standard do you use and when to deploy it and when not to?
Well, DOB controls the use of that fund mostly. Some things have to go through an independent board called the Board for Condemnation of Insanitary Buildings. If we're gonna knock down the building, it'll go through that. And we mostly use it for either the grass and trash stuff, because that's forever and it's sort of easy to do efficiently, or for the biggest, most dangerous issues. Right? Like if there is a wall that we find that's about to fall over and the owner's nowhere to be found, that's stuff that we will use nuisance abatement fund for any day of the week. The part that I'm trying to build more is this middle zone, right? And we've been piloting, I think someone mentioned, coming out and just replacing the smoke detectors is another thing that's pretty easy to do. And FEMS has a program for single family homes. We can potentially, we're gonna have to see where the money goes with this, but theoretically, we could try to do the same thing in apartment buildings, and we could just fix all of them, right? And there would never be a problem with smoke detector wasn't fixed. We'd notify the landlord about it, and if they didn't fix it, we go out and we put up a new smoke detector. But there is a lot of trade-offs and challenges in this, both getting the resources and getting the sort of state capacity to make it happen.
When does the issue go to FEMS and when does it go to you? Because we had a fire alarm issue, we were told to go to FEMS, but now I'm just learning that we should have gone to DOB.
So FEMS, if it's fire alarm, I would say try FEMS first, right? Like they have the primary authority over that. Obviously, we touch fire alarms too as well. We work with FEMS a lot. But if it's specifically fire alarm, I'd start with them. If it's anything else that's building, like our main space in the building is gonna be structure, right? Like FEMS isn't gonna do structure. We have a little bit of overlap with fire alarm. We have overlap on egress and other things like that too.
A solution would take more training later, but I have a nonprofit that's not off the ground yet. And one of my programs is an employment, neighborhood employment and community engagement program. We could have neighborhood crews that cut the grass through my nonprofit. We got a recreation center with a shed and all that stuff, and then they get paid with foundation money that I get. Things get fixed and people get to know each other. And it would be a partnership and, on the cuff of making it all happen in other places. And it's aftercare with recreation centers, other things. But it'd be beautiful ways to get some men off the streets too and employed, and extra money could go towards homeowners that need other things fixed.
Yeah.
Sounds like piece of cake.
Have you looked into DOES since they have their employment program also? So you said you need contractors or you need people to do things on the weekend. Department of Employment Services has so many people that need jobs and the government will pay them if they can come in and do the easier stuff on the weekends. Is that an option?
I mean, the bigger problem is the money, right? We have a system where we can deploy contractors on the weekends. It doesn't have enough money to do it all the time.
Right, but Department of Employment Services, for smaller jobs, I'm talking about, that might take a load off of other inspectors.
And
right?
they're paying people.
They have their funds that they will pay those people who are formerly incarcerated, they're already vetted, and they need jobs. And you work with agency to make, you know, certain things happen, like the grass getting cut, so you don't have to go through a contractor or something like
If
that.
anybody wants to talk more about.
Yeah, I'll think of
Yeah.
that.
And I wrote that down too, so.
All right, so we've got 2 more minutes and I have a couple more things to say, but
Questions.
yeah.
So, something that said, mold, bring in DOB, and then it said bring in DOEE. Can you tell us, is there something differently that the two do? If the residents reach out, and then the other one was about smoke detectors, I'm glad somebody mentioned it just a second ago. Can landlords fine residents for repeatedly removing the smoke detectors? After after the resident has called DOB and replaced this in pictures and things like that, can the landlord, fine the resident for removing the smoke detector?
Well, that's gonna depend, the landlord should talk to the landlord's lawyer about their rights under their lease, whether they can pass along. And for anyone who's listening, tenants, do not remove your smoke detectors, please, leave them up, they're there to protect.
But the maintenance.
Did you have a
man is right.
question, Neil? On the DOE currently inspects for mold. They don't have enforcement powers.
We just found out
So
that
we've been-
all of a lot of our smoke detectors are expired, and that's because a lot of our units are not housing choice. So for somebody to move into their apartment, apartment needs to be approved and be up to code, but for those who are not on housing choice, they're falling through the cracks. We have expired fire alarms in our building, so I know you wanna hold the tenant accountable for removing a fire detector, but how can we hold the landlord accountable for having expired fire detectors?
Well, call us up, we do that all the time, we got the long stick, we will hit the button, we'll.
All
make
right,
sure
Mr.
it
Parsons,
beeps.
you're gonna hear from me. Hey, Mr. Williams, yeah, we're gonna talk.
Send us proof and we will look at it. And I've done this kind of challenge before, right? I get this challenge from the other side saying like, your inspectors are making mistakes. They're citing things that aren't supposed to be cited. And I say the same thing. I say, yeah, you're saying this broadly. Send me cases that prove it. I will look at them. And, you know, I went through a lot of that, and I got very few cases where my guys were in fact wrong. So do, you know, put my challenge to the test. Send me the cases. We will look at them. We do not want to have a system that can be easily thwarted or fooled.
I have no idea. It looks like we lost our internet, but
We're back
hopefully,
online though. so
yeah.
That's okay. Okay, here we go.
Mr. President.
Yes. All right.
All right, do you wanna go ahead, Andrea?
Yeah, so, I wanna thank everybody for coming out. I know we did not get to everything, like, there was a lot of recommendations, and we definitely have more to talk about. So one of the things we're hoping for as a next step is to have regular meetings with DOB, or at least to plan for, another one, within a couple months. And we especially wanna do this because DOB is working on their strategic enforcement plan. So we definitely want to be a part of that process and continue talking about these recommendations that y'all brought up today. So, and I see you, Ms. Denise. I just want to get through these next steps real quick. So we were thinking, and we'll talk about it more, but we were thinking maybe early December if we could have another meeting with the Department of Buildings to kind of just hear more updates about the strategic enforcement plan and to continue the conversations that we had today. DOB does have a copy of all of the talking points, so they have that complete list of recommendations and the questions that we came up with, and we can keep on, you know, communicating with them and sending them things, so we can get prepared for that meeting. But that's one thing we're hoping to do. And then other than that, we do have our tenant power space. We host that twice a month, y'all. So come out. Our next meeting is October the 1st. I'm trying to see if I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, you know, we talked a lot today about how there's one side of things and then the tenant has another side, and it's not always a complete story. So we really do want to encourage folks to share their story. We didn't talk a lot about the Rental Act today, but that is an important policy that was passed that really changed tenants' rights. And so I think just in the spirit of improving, you know, all protections for tenants, including inspections and enforcement, we're encouraging folks to come out and share their voice, share what's happening, you know, what happened during your inspection, whether things were improved, because we had such a productive, and I do want to thank y'all, we had such a productive conversation today because we had so many tenants that were able to share their perspective and share, you know, how these inspections are working for them. So we encourage you to get connected with us and continue doing that. We will come to you, we'll record you, you know, we'll hook you up. Y'all know, like, so we also have a membership, we're a membership organization, so join us as a member. You can connect with me to talk about that, and also Farrah.
Thank y'all.
And yes, thank you, DOB, thank you, residents. Oh.
Yeah, is that okay if we share your slides with us?
Yeah, I think those slides are
fine. Have you ever thought about having a advisory board of tenants so that you guys are constantly, I mean, you know, other agencies have commissioners, but you can get feedback real time, especially from Tenants Association president.
Yeah, I mean, y'all have pitched ideas like that at me, and I'm definitely down to keep talking and meet again. So yeah, that's a good idea.
Wonderful. Yes, this one's in. All right, thank y'all.
Everyone, here, and I don't know.
They can see you. Yeah, they can see you again.
Online as well on our website. I'm a liaison with the director's office. I'm a workplace account manager. My job is basically to kind of unstick sticky issues or, you know, kind of places where things fall through the cracks, kind of catch those things and provide help and resource to residents. So I would encourage you also to, you know, go on, there are 4 of us, you know, as it stands, you know, one for every one person for every 2 wards. And so if you're experiencing anything where either you've gone through the normal process and, you know, things are working out, you're having difficulty contacting DOB or or you have some problem that is outside of the normal, that needs to be escalated, I'd encourage you to contact, us there as well, and the information is there on the website. Or you can just filter everything to me, jason.williamson@dc.gov, and, then I'll try to dodge the bullets and hand off to my colleague. That's it.
Can you say your number?
Jason.williamson
I put it in the
at
chat.
dc.gov. But my information is also on the website.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much for organizing this.
Thank you.